My answer, if you don't mind, is if it was me, my desire, if I was in the human body right now, I was on the planet Earth, my desire would be to be keen of mind, because it's still important, to be keen of mind, but without the control and the dominance of the mind. Without the mind being so judgmental and so very, very limited. The mind judges to keep itself within its limits. It judges you personally, attacks you, because that keeps everything within the limitations of the mind. I would desire to be keen of mind because the mind is still important. It's nice to have a mind that can bring in knowingness in the moment. Nice to have a mind that knows how to do the basic things, reading or working at your computer, mathematics, whatever it happens to be, your profession. I'd like to be keen of mind, but I'd also have a great desire to be transsensual, to be transsensual. I didn't say transsexual, as some of you wanted to hear.
What?
To be, would you write that word down, please, so there's no misunderstanding? Because right now I can imagine social media's lighting up. Did you know Adamus is transsexual?
I'm scared.
To be transsensual. In other words, the sensual experiences that you've been having up until now are very, very limited. Generally, I would say probably 99% of the time from the mind. And the mind is not a sensual vessel at all. It will make up. It will mimic sensuality. It will mimic feelings. As we talked about for a long time, the mind creates emotions to mimic real feelings. But emotions aren't real feelings. They're thoughts with energy around them. But they're not real feelings. It's been so long since most of you have had a really, that's good spelling, have had a really sensual experience. You might think you have, you say, I just had great sex the other night. Humans have sex physically and mentally. Very, very little real sensual feeling. Very little. And sensuality, by the way, is not necessarily about sexuality. Most people would say that the highest form of human sensuality is sex, and it's not. That's way down at the bottom of real sensuality. I would say that in 2017 would be the year of not just talking about sensuality, as we have sometimes in the past, but now actually experiencing it, bringing it in. It's almost difficult to define in words. It is a feeling that goes far beyond the mind, goes far beyond just the physical. And again, we've talked before about the 5 physical senses, which create your perception of reality. But together, working with the mind, it absolutely limits perception of reality. You're getting all of your input from your eyes and your ears and your nose and your mouth, all feeding into your brain. They're all right up here next to your brain, feeding into the brain, creating memories which aren't real, memories are just emotional thoughts. And it's not really what happened in the past or in the future. And the mind then says that you're having feelings, but you're just bored. Most humans are just bored. They're so far away from real sensuality. Now, what they try to do is create sensuality with things like video games, with things like the internet. These are not sensual, my friends. These are not sensual. They're a distraction, maybe. They cause one to use the mind and maybe cause one to get a little excited playing a video game, but it's an artificial reality. It's a mental reality. It's still all within the framework of the mind. It's been a long, long time since you've had a real sensual experience. And it's almost, well, it's indescribable in words. You can't try to create it in the mind. It is sensing at the most joyful, the easiest, and the, how to say, the most colorful, the most expansive level. It's inherent in you as spiritual beings, as angelic beings. It's inherent. As a matter of fact, it's more your real nature, sensuality, than the mind human that you become. You've had to train yourself and discipline yourself to become mental. You've had to literally program yourself and get hypnotized to be the mental being that you are. But it's not your natural state. You don't have to seek sensuality. Basically, you cannot. You cannot try to make it. Some will try, and then it's just going to go mental, and it's not really sensual. But it's your divine nature. It's your true nature. Long, long, long before you ever came to earth, you were a being of pure senses and without the mind. Now, it would lead one to ask, well, then why did you come to earth? And why did you take on a mind? And why did you create a limitation of the mind and then try to so hard to get back out of it? In this reality of the mind, of time and space, you get a different perspective of things. You get a different flavor and taste. It allows you, for instance, in working with time and space, to see the effects of your actions, of your thoughts, and of your creations. Working in mind, time, and space, you slow everything down and you get to understand what I guess you would call consequences, but you get to understand, you get to comprehend cause and effect in a way that was very, very difficult to do as a sensual, angelic being. Many times even without time or space, no consequence of time or space. Where, if you could imagine for a moment, the sensual, no, not a thought, but the sensualness of an angelic being with no time and space. When the moment something is desired, then it happens. The moment that there is, it's not a thought, but it's a passion. A moment of passion comes forth from within a non-physical angelic being. Then it happens. And as beautiful as that is, it also created some issues in the other realms. There was no separation. There was no distinction of time or space. It would be like, right now, could you imagine that any thought that you had suddenly became manifest? Any thought. The world wouldn't be here right now because one of you just thought about blowing up the world. Any thought suddenly became real. In a way, it's kind of a blessing that humans in their current state of awareness don't have that capability, because suddenly you would be 12 feet tall, Edith, and you'd be amazingly beautiful, even more so than you are, but you'd be beating the crap out of some people who've given you a hard time, because you think about it for a moment. Now, you may never actually do it, but could you imagine a reality where suddenly it just happens? That's pretty scary. So time and space and the mind kind of slow things down, shut things down. It gives a whole new sense to the stream of life. It gives a whole new sense to creation. In a very strange way of putting it, it's rather a difficult concept, but I'll try to distill it. Right now, you're on the underbelly of your creative self. You're on the underbelly, the underside of creation, understanding creation. You came from an angelic being pretty much free of time, space, and mind. You came down through time, space, and created limited physical, mental senses. And you got to the underbelly, where there's absolute limitation, restriction, a loss of sensual, real feeling, real inspiration. It's all been scrubbed out, so now you can really understand from the underbelly of real creation what actual creation is, what actual sensuality is. The good news is that you've gone through the most compaction, limitation, restriction, and you made it. You're here. And now we come out from the underbelly. We come around to the top side with a whole new understanding of creation and you, the creator. And as you probably can sense, that there is a direct correlation between sensuality and creation or creativity, true creation. I guess another way of stating it is that in order to understand at the most sensual level your beingness as a creator, in order to understand really what being a creator is, you had to be the uncreator. You had to be the boxed in, limited, unpassionate, unsensual, all the rest of that. Now, you don't have to work at getting out of the box. You can't. It doesn't work. I tried it. Did I ever tell you the story of... They laugh. The story of my being trapped in a crystal for 100,000 years. And, I couldn't think my way out or fight my way out. It wasn't until I finally said, I'm just going to walk out. I created it. I'm going to walk out of it. Then I broke free of my crystal prison. It's the same way here. I'm asking you, and I'm really imploring on you, let's not fight our way out of this. Let's not think our way out of it. You can't. But you're going to allow out of it back into your sensual nature. You're going to realize with sensuality, it's I call it transsensual, because you're used to some sensual experiences in your body, whether it's eating good food, making love, whether it's just a feeling of physical balance and calmness, sitting in a hot tub, having a glass of wine. But that is like 0.00001 compared to real sensuality, which is like 100. There's such a huge difference, but you continue to have a physical, sensual experience. It'll still be there. It'll be more colorful, expanded, profound than before. And you continue to have mental, sensual experiences. A mental, sensual experience tends to be, for instance, a feeling of you finish a project, you finish your book. There is a sensual experience, but it's really mental. It's like, oh yeah, okay, you finished a book, big deal. But your mind is reveling in it for a moment, or the publisher calls like they will soon, and so, oh yeah, we want to publish a book. There's that euphoria, but it's not real sensuality. It's a little tiny bit of it, but I'm talking real sensuality. You can't try to figure it out, but you can realize it's inherent. It is the real you before you came down to the underbelly of understanding creation. It's already there.